In the heart of Zahram Palace, under chandeliers dripping with crystal light, billionaire Sheikh Rashad Al-Khoury stood like a tempest contained, his piercing eyes scanning the opulent room with iron resolve. Tonight was not like any other gala. Tonight, he had broken all the unspoken codes of his flawless existence. Tonight, he dared to bring the unexpected, with consequences no one could predict. The palace breathed with luxury. Golden silk curtains whispered in the desert breeze. The scent of rare incense wrapped the marble halls like an invisible veil. And the murmurs of the high society wove an intricate tapestry of power and pretension. Yet beneath this grandeur, Rashad's pulse thundered with a restless energy. Years of absolute control felt like chains he longed to shatter. At his side stood Layla, the maid, a woman cloaked in modesty but burning with a fierce light hidden beneath her quiet exterior. Her hands, usually trembling with unseen tensions, now rested steady on her gown. The contrast between the gleaming world around her and her humble origins was a chasm wide enough to swallow many. But tonight, Rashad's gamble was clear. He brought her into his world, curious to see if the fire within her could ignite rocks and rewrite destinies. As they entered the ballroom, eyes flicked sharply toward them. Whispers unfurled like silk ribbons, laced with disbelief and disdain. The elite had expected a display of defiance from Rashad, but not this. A servant in their sanctum, daring to breathe the rarefied air of power. Layla's presence was a silent storm, unsettling centuries of rigid hierarchy. For a moment, Rashad's gaze locked with hers, a flash of something uncharacteristic flickering beneath his cold exterior. Admiration, maybe. Or something softer, more dangerous. The tension between them held the room in suspended breath. The first act of rebellion came like a thunderclap. As the ambassador's wife unveiled the latest scandal with a poisonous smile, Layla stepped forward. Without hesitation, her voice cut through the chatter, clear and firm, challenging a whispered lie that had gone unchecked. The room gasped. This maid dared to speak truth in a place ruled by polished deceit. Shock blossomed into stunned silence. This was no timid servant. This was a woman who refused to be silenced, who bent the rules with the grace of a desert wind carving stone. Rashad's control wavered for the first time that night, his carefully maintained empire shaken by the audacity of one woman. Whispers grew, admiration tangled with scorn, curiosity dancing with contempt. Layla's boldness fractured the delicate glass of society, and Rashad found himself suspended between pride and apprehension. Would her rebellion cost him everything he had built, or would it unlock a new path neither had dared to dream? As the murmurs swelled, Rashad's heart hammered with conflicted emotions: admiration, protectiveness, and the faintest spark of something long buried. This night, the boundaries between power and vulnerability blurred. The game had changed. Before the gala could recover from her shockwave, Layla lifted a glass, her eyes meeting the frozen crowds with undeniable conviction. I am not just. A servant, she declared. I am a force you will soon learn to respect. The ballroom froze, then erupted into whispers more fierce than before. Before the next secret of this dazzling empire unfolds, make sure you're already part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be sealed, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Drop a like if the heart of this billionaire sheikh has already intrigued you. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga, and what twist do you think is about to happen? Your passion for these dramas fuels our journey. Thank you for being with us. The ballroom's murmurs rippled like heat waves, swirling around Layla and Rashad as their eyes met. Is steady, commanding, hers fierce yet uncertain. The weight of centuries-old traditions pressured down on them, but neither wavered. Layla's declaration hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. I am not just a servant, she repeated softly, more to herself than to the crowd. Her voice, steady as the desert sun, disrupted the polished veneer of Zahram Palace's elite. Every eye was on her, a goddess amidst whispered doubts. Rashad's grip tightened on her arm, a silent reminder that despite the audacity of her rebellion, she stood under his protection and his control. But beneath that iron exterior, his heart thudded erratically, a tempest in a desert calm. For years, his life had been ruled by solitude and rigid rules. Yet here was a woman who challenged everything he thought he knew. He cared more than he dared admit. The ambassador's wife, Farah, eyes gleaming like poisoned jewels, stepped forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. My, how bold of you to forget your place, Layla. To think you could disrupt centuries of order simply by uttering words unbecoming of your station. Layla did not flinch. Instead, she met Farah's gaze, steady and unyielding. Order maintained through lies is merely a cage, one I refuse to live in. Gasps darted across the gold-plated walls. The elite, guardians of their fragile kingdoms, reeled at this temerity. This was no gentle protest. It was a declaration of war. Rashad's lips curled faintly, a smile masked as derision. Enough, he commanded, voice like velvet, wrapped in steel. The room obeyed, the clinking glasses silencing in unison. Layla speaks truth that many here are unwilling to hear. Perhaps it is time for new voices to shape our future. Shock frayed the crowd's uneasy silence. Whispers intensified into an undercurrent of tension. Some eyes now sparkled with secret admiration. Others burned with simmering resentment. Layla's gaze flitted briefly to Rashad. For a fleeting moment, vulnerability flickered there. A fragile truce between power and surrender. She sensed the surrender was not just to her boldness, but to something deeper, hidden beneath his steel-clad heart. The grand chandelier above them glittered, casting prisms of light that danced across polished marble, reflecting the fractured world inside this dazzling prison. A servant's footsteps echoed softly through the doorway. Rashad's trusted confidant, Malik, appeared, his scowl sharpened by urgency. My sheikh, danger brews beyond these walls. The whispers you ignited tonight have awakened old enemies. Rashad's gaze narrowed, the familiar rush of adrenaline flooding his veins. The delicate game he'd just started with Layla was already threatening to unravel. Turning back to the room, Rashad lifted his glass, voice resonant. "Tonight, we choose a new path. Let none forget who commands this palace, or who wields its future." The crowd fractured. Some bowed their heads, others clenched fists, and still others exchanged secret glances. Power, once absolute, now trembled on the edge of revolution. Layla stepped beside Rashad, her chest rising with steady breaths. Her presence was no longer merely tolerated. It was a beacon, a challenge to the rigid hierarchy suffocating Zahram. Alone, later that night, Rashad paced the grand gallery. Moonlight spilled in through arched windows, casting silver lines on his brocade robes. His thoughts tangled with the chaos he'd sown, and the woman at the center of it. He recalled how Layla's dark eyes had burned past the shimmering gowns and gilded masks, straight into the fortress of his secrets. There was fire there, untamed and raw. It terrified him, and, paradoxically, it beckoned. A faint knock interrupted his reverie. The door creaked open to reveal Layla. She stepped inside, the scent of jasmine trailing behind her like a whispered promise. "You summoned me, Sheikh?" Her voice was low, threaded with guarded hope. Rashad motioned toward the velvet divan. "Come." She hesitated, then settled near him, the tension between them electric. For a moment, silence filled the cavernous room, speaking volumes louder than words. "I knew the risks," Layla said finally, eyes searching his. "Yet I will not be invisible anymore." Rashad's gaze softened, the facade cracking just enough to admit a sliver of truth. "You have already changed everything, including me." Her breath hitched, and without thinking, their hands brushed. The touch was brief, but blazed like fire against ice. Unspoken promises, fears, and desires swirling in the space between them. Outside, distant drums announced the approaching caravan. A coded message Rashad recognized instantly. His expression darkened as realization sank in. Old enemies did not rest. Layla caught the shadow crossing his face. "What's coming, Rashad?" He inhaled, sharply, steadying himself. "A storm, one that will expose every truth, every secret." Her eyes widened. "Then we face it together." He nodded, voice fierce with determination. "Together we survive, or we fall trying." The night tightened around Zahram Palace, thick with whispered threats and fragile alliances. The billionaire sheikh and the servant-turned-rebel had ignited a powder keg. The fuel was burning, and the desert winds howled their warning. From the shadows beyond the illuminated halls, eyes watched. Enemies ready to strike, allies questioning loyalties. And in this fragile moment between power and chaos, Rashad's heart pulsed with a dangerous hope, a hope that the woman who dared to defy him might also be his salvation. But as the first sands of the storm began to shift, a secret, long buried beneath Zahram's golden sands, clawed its way to the surface. A secret that, if revealed, would shatter not only the fragile trust between Rashad and Layla, but unravel the very foundation of their world. The sound of shattered glass echoed softly through the silent corridors of the palace, and with it came a whisper, a name that could ignite war: Dahlia. The sound of shattered glass lingered in the stillness of Zahram Palace like a sinister ripple, spreading unease through the ornate corridors. Rashad's sharp gaze pierced the shadows as he moved swiftly toward the source, every sinew taut with the urgency that clung to the night like desert heat. The name, Dahlia, had echoed in his mind with a venomous clarity, a name buried in the past, too dangerous to awaken. In a secluded alcove bathed in moonlight, Malik stood over a broken crystal decanter, fragments glittering like the jagged edges of secrets laid bare. His face was a storm of frustration and warning. "Sheikh, this is no mere accident." Malik's voice cracked through the silence. "Dahlia's name alone brings ruin. She has allies in the shadows, people who crave your downfall." Rashad's fists clenched, the weight of unseen enemies pressing harder than the desert sun. He had thought tonight marked a new beginning, an upheaval of the old order with Layla by his side. But the past was a quicksand, pulling him deeper. Layla stepped out from the shadows behind him, her dark eyes sharp and wary. "Who is Dahlia?" Her voice, steady yet laced with steel, broke the tension like a sword through silk. Rashad spared her a glance that wavered between caution and something vulnerable he refused to name. "A tempest long buried, a woman whose betrayal shattered more than alliances. Her return could undo everything." Layla's lips pressed into a determined line. "Then we must face this tempest together." He studied her, the flicker of fear veiled beneath her fierce resolve. In that moment, the palace did not feel like an impenetrable fortress, but a fragile orb spinning on the edge of destruction. The night wind whispered through the open windows, carrying the scent of jasmine, a cruel reminder of the delicate balance between power and vulnerability that held Zahram's future precariously. Later, in the grandeur of his private chamber, Rashad stood by the window, gazing out at the sprawling desert where the horizon blurred into secrets and shadows. The opulence of the world he commanded felt hollow against the storm gathering within. His thoughts drifted to Layla, her unyielding spirit, the fire she sparked inside him, both a balm and an inferno. A knock at the door shattered his reverie. She entered without hesitation, his silhouette framed by the soft lamplight. The jasmine scent clung to her like a promise, fragile yet insistent. "Rashad," she whispered, stepping closer, "the palace is no longer just yours to protect. It belongs to us now, if you trust me." His voice was a low rumble, rough with unspoken desires. "Trust is earned in fire, Layla, not given lightly." Their eyes locked, and the space between them crackled with unspoken confessions. The world beyond the walls faded. There was only this charged silence, the heartbeat of two souls bound by defiance and fragile hope. Suddenly the curtain stirred as a gust swept through, carrying with it a faint, haunting melody. Rashad's eyes narrowed. That was no mere wind. It was a message, an echo of old wars fought in secret. A cold dread settled over him. "Enemies are gathering," Rashad said, voice tight, "and Dahlia is their spearhead." Layla's pulse quickened, but she squared her shoulders. "Then we prepare." The following hours dissolved into a flurry of whispered counsel and shadowed strategies. Rashad's trusted men moved like phantoms through the palace, sealing entrances, scanning every flicker of movement. Yet no calm could stem the rising tide of betrayal that sought to erode his empire from within. In the quiet moments, Rashad found himself drawn to Layla's presence, a tether in the storm. She was unlike anyone he had ever known, strength wrapped in fragility, rebellion softened by conviction. She challenged him, unraveled him, and yet she was the only certainty amidst the swirling chaos. As dawn crept along the horizon, Rashad's mind replayed the memory of Dahlia, her name a poison and a promise. What had she taken? What was she willing to destroy to reclaim her place? He realized with a cold certainty that the palace's greatest threat was not the desert winds, nor the whispered conspiracies, but a secret buried in its own past, a secret that Dahlia wielded like a blade. Layla watched him. From across the room, her gaze steady, but inside, a storm mirrored his own. They were two flames caught in a gale, each fueled by a past they could neither fully trust nor escape. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors burst open. Malik entered, breathless, his expression etched with dread. "She has arrived, my sheikh. Dahlia walks these halls again." Rashad's world contracted to a pinpoint of icy focus. The storm was not coming. It was here. He advanced toward the grand balcony where the morning sun cast long shadows over the palace gardens. The first figure emerged from the swirling dust, a woman cloaked in white silk, her eyes a frozen blaze of fury and secrets. Dahlia. The desert held its breath, and in that suspended moment, Rashad knew that the fragile alliance with Layla was about to be tested like never before. The collision of past and present, love and betrayal, would decide the fate of Zahram Palace and of their hearts. The silent, searing tension rippled through the air as Dahlia's gaze locked with Rashad's. A war was inevitable, and beneath the surface of that inevitable battle, Dahlia whispered the final threat. "Your empire is a lie, Rashad, and I am here to tear it down." The amber light of dawn filtered through the lofty windows of Zahram Palace, painting long shadows that stretched like silent warnings across the marble floor. Rashad leaned heavily against the ornate balustrade of his private balcony, eyes fixed on the distant desert horizon, where the first whispers of the coming storm stirred the sands. His breath came shallow, the weight of Dahlia's sudden return pressing against his chest with an unbearable gravity. Behind him, the heavy curtains rippled, and Layla stepped quietly into the room, her presence both steady and fragile, a living contradiction that had become the axis of his restless world. Her dark eyes searched his face, tracing the lines carved by sleepless nights and battles fought in shadows. "He's here," Rashad said without looking at her, the name jangling like a bell toll in the silent air. Layla's fingers curled tightly around the silk of her gown. "Dahlia," she whispered, the word trembling as if it carried a curse. "But why now?" she asked, voice low, fierce. "After all these years buried beneath the ashes, why does she rise to threaten us today?" Rashad's eyes finally met hers, storm clouds swirling in their depths. "Because she never left. She only waited, biding her time while building her army of shadows. Every whispered doubt, every stifled betrayal, she orchestrated from the darkness. The palace suddenly felt smaller, suffocating, trapped between past sins and looming war. Layla's gaze hardened. Then we must burn those shadows down before they consume us. He reached for her hand, the calluses of power giving way to something softer in that simple touch. You don't understand what she's capable of. His voice dropped to a haunted murmur. She's not just an enemy. She's a tempest, one that will tear everything I've built apart, and everyone I love. Their fingers tightened, a fragile tether straining against a tempest no one dared face alone. Beyond the palace walls, the rising sun cast a gilded glow on the desert dunes, deceptive in its warmth. Inside, the tension thickened like incense smoke, curling around the opulence with promises of destruction. A sudden knock shattered the stillness. Malik appeared in the doorway, urgency etching deep lines in his solemn face. Sheikh, the palace defenses have been compromised. Scouts report unusual activity in the eastern sands, movements too calculated to be mere chance. Rashad's jaw clenched. Dahlia's vanguard is already within striking distance. She's here to reclaim what she believes is hers. Layla stepped forward, unbowed. Then we stand in the fire with her, together. Rashad's eyes darkened with emotion, a tempest of pride, fear, and unspoken longing. You, born among servants, may not understand the burden of a sheikh, Layla. But soon, you'll see that power is a merciless master. She met his gaze without flinching, a fierce challenge simmering in her defiant stare. And love? She asked quietly. Is love merciless too? For a heartbeat, their world held its breath. The chandeliers overhead sparkled like stars caught in gilded webs, reflecting the fragile hope blooming between them. The air shifted, shadows lengthening, secrets deepening. As Rashad moved toward the grand war room, Layla followed, their footsteps echoing through silent halls, lined with portraits of ancestors long gone, whose eyes seemed to watch the brewing storm with unread judgment. Inside, maps lay strewn across the mahogany table, sketches of the desert terrain. Marked with encampments and lines drawn in urgency, Malik pointed toward the eastern frontiers. Her forces are mobilizing swiftly. If we don't act, we lose everything, Rashad finished grimly. His fingers traced the jagged lines like scars. Zahram, the empire, our lives. Layla rested a hand over his, grounding him. Then we do not falter, not now. The room hummed with tension, plans dripping from sharpened voices into cold reality. Yet beneath the strategic fury, feeling empty, feeling not prepared. Rashad heard the soft rhythm of Layla's steady heart, a lighthouse in the storm. Later, under the moon that cast silver light burning with betrayal and promise, a sudden soft sound drew his gaze. A slip of paper left upon a marble bench, its edges curling like a desert rose in bloom. Rashad's fingers trembled as he unfolded the note. The ink was elegant, cruel in its simplicity. Trust is a fragile mirage, Rashad. Betrayal runs deeper than blood. Look to your heart. There, the traitor waits. His breath caught. The words pierced deeper than any blade. Behind him, footsteps approached. Layla's voice, cautious but unwavering. What is it? He handed her the note, watching her pale face tighten with unease. A warning from the past we fought buried. Dahlia is not just a threat to the palace walls. She's sowing discord where trust should grow. Layla folded the note carefully. Then, we are surrounded, not only by enemies in the sands, but by shadows within. Rashad stepped closer, the heat of their proximity a silent confession. Can we survive that? He asked, voice raw. Her gaze locked onto his, fierce and unwavering. We will, because this time we face the storm together. No more shadows, no more silence. A sudden gust swept through the open balcony doors, swirling the jasmine-scented air around them like a whisper from destiny. In that charged silence, a distant echo shattered the night, the clatter of armored boots on marble. Rashad's eyes narrowed, a cold fire igniting within. They have breached the palace. The battle begins. But the war lies in a secret darker than the desert night. Layla's breath caught, heart pounding, like a distant drum of war. Before either could speak again, the heavy gallery doors burst open. A figure stepped into the moonlight, draped in black silk, eyes gleaming with merciless calculation. Malik's voice was a harsh whisper. It's her. The heart of Zahram Palace halted, and in that moment, Rashad knew the fragile refuge of trust and love was about to be shattered by a betrayal deeper and deadlier than any they had faced. His lips parted to speak, but the words froze as the woman in black met his gaze and whispered, razor sharp, "The truth you bury is the death of us all, Rashad." The desert held its breath. The night had thickened over Zahram Palace, the moon casting shadows that danced like restless spirits. Among the gilded moldings and polished marble floors, Rashad stood silently beside the towering window in his private chamber. The vast desert stretching endlessly beyond, a tapestry of shifting sands mirroring the turmoil within his soul. The air was heavy with jasmine scent, a faint reminder of Layla's presence earlier, her spirit woven tightly into the fabric of this sacred place. His thoughts raced, tangled in memories of Dahlia, the woman who returned not as a forgotten myth, but as a living storm, armed with vengeance and secrets too potent to ignore. Soft footsteps disturbed the stillness. Layla entered without hesitation, her eyes unwavering, burning brighter than the stars outside. She closed the distance between them, the warmth of her nearness, a fragile shield against the gathering darkness. "You can't carry this alone," she whispered, her voice steady but laced with concern. "Dahlia isn't just a shadow from your past. She's a threat that pierces the very heart of this palace." Rashad's fists clenched against the cold stone window frame. "She came back not just for power. She came to dismantle everything I built. And perhaps everything I still hope to protect." Layla's gaze softened, courage and compassion entwined. "Then we face her without hesitation. Together." Their hands met, fingers entwining with a silent promise, a fragile alliance forged against the storm. Suddenly, the stillness was shattered by urgent knocks echoing down the corridor. Malik appeared, his eyes ablaze with grim news. "Sheikh, the eastern gates were breached at dusk. Small but coordinated forces slipped through. Dahlia's." Advance is swift, her reach deeper than we predicted. A chill gripped Rashad's spine. The palace, a fortress of gleaming gold and whispered courtesies, now felt vulnerable, its heart laid bare. "We must act swiftly," Rashad said, voice low but resolute. "Send word to our commanders, fortify the inner sanctums, and secure the palace grounds." Malik nodded and retreated, swallowed by the shadows. Left alone once more, Rashad paced the length of his chamber, each step a drumbeat in a rising symphony of tension. Layla watched him, sensing the tempest beneath his calm exterior. This was a man burdened, not only by threats without, but by battles waged within. Her voice broke the silence. "What does Dahlia truly want, Rashad? Is it power, revenge, or something else?" The question hung in the air like a fragile glass waiting to shatter. Rashad's eyes darkened, a flicker of pain crossing his features. She wants what she lost. The throne, the love she believed was taken from her. But her path is drenched in betrayal. She forgets that to destroy an empire, sometimes you must first destroy the souls within it. Layla stepped closer, courage blazing in her gaze. "Then I will be the shield for those souls. Whatever storm she brings, I will stand by you." He turned to face her fully, the weight of unspoken emotions trembling between them. Admiration, fear, a longing that neither dared voice. Outside, the palace gardens whispered with the cold desert wind, leaves rustling like distant warnings. Somewhere, a faint melody threaded through the air, the haunting call of an oud carried on night air, drawing memories neither wanted to confront. A sudden, sharp sound snapped their attention, the clash of steel upon steel. Rashad's senses sharpened, body coiled for action. Guarding the inner courtyard, the palace's silent sentinels faced a new wave of invaders. Dahlia's forces moved like shadows, their footsteps muffled, but their intent clear. Rashad and Layla exchanged a glance, a silent accord passing between them. He drew a breath, steadying the chaos inside. "Come," he urged. They moved swiftly through secret passages, corridors veined with history and whispered conspiracies, toward the tumultuous heart of the palace. In the war room, the air was thick with urgency. Commanders shouted orders. Maps covered in hastily drawn plans cluttered the table. Malik awaited. Rin-faced, but steady. Dahlia's name echoed unspoken, but undeniable. "She commands not just soldiers," Malik warned. "Her influence seeps into the loyalties of those we trusted." The words hit like a blade. Rashad's eyes narrowed. Betrayal was a poison more lethal than any army. Layla's hand found his, grounding him amidst the storm. Then we rooted out, together. For a fleeting heartbeat, the world narrowed to their closeness, their defiance in the eye of the approaching tempest. Suddenly, a messenger burst into the chamber, breathless and shaken. "My sheikh, a traitor, moves within the palace walls. One who answers to Dahlia." Rashad's jaw tensed, rage and disbelief warring within him. "Who?" The messenger swallowed hard. "It's one of your own, someone near." The room stilled. The air thickened with suspicion and dread. Layla's voice broke the spell. Then let the light of truth burn away the shadows. Rashad's eyes met hers, steel, locked with fire. The battle was no longer only for territory or power. It was for trust, for survival, for the fragile hope that had begun to bloom between them. A slow, deliberate knock sounded at the chamber door. Malik's hand hovered over his sword's hilt. Rashad nodded once, a signal born of years commanding respect. The doors creaked open. A messenger, face pale yet resolute, stepped inside, holding a sealed letter. Rashad's eyes darkened as he recognized the intricate golden emblem, the mark of Dahlia's closest ally. He broke the seal and unfolded the letter with measured hands. The words written inside were a venomous promise carved in ink. The fortress you build is crumbling, Rashad. Your heart is exposed. The victory belongs to those who embrace the storm. Layla's breath hitched, a look of fierce determination sharpening her features. Rashad crumpled the letter, voice a low growl. This war, it will demand everything. Layla stepped closer, voice unwavering. Then we give everything, but not before we burn the truth into the hearts of those who doubt. Their fingers intertwined once more, their union fragile yet unyielding, a beacon against the gathering darkness. Beyond the palace walls, the desert night simmered with secrets and shadows. And in the distance, beneath a crescent moon, a single horse galloped hard and fast, carrying a message that would tear open the fragile veil. Hiding the greatest secret of Zahram and threatened to destroy Rashad, Layla, and the empire they fought to save. A name whispered by the desert wind, drenched in blood and betrayal, echoed nearer. Dahlia's reckoning has only just begun. The palace felt smaller, its vast marble halls suddenly oppressive as Rashad's jaw tightened over the burning note in his hand. The words were a dark mirror, reflecting a truth he dared not fully face. Trust, betrayal. Whispers tied to the deepest parts of his heart. Layla's steady footsteps crossed the chamber, and she stopped beside him. Her voice was firm, but beneath it lay a current of fear only she dared conceal. If the traitor is close, then the danger isn't just outside these walls. It's inside. Rashad closed his eyes, breathing past the weight that pinned his chest. For years I ruled with iron certainty, but tonight that certainty fractures. He met her gaze, searching for a lie or weakness, but finding only unwavering courage. You've changed everything, Layla. Not just this palace, but me. A fragile smile brushed her lips, fading as quickly as it came. Then we stand together, no secrets, no shadows. The late-night air carried the faint scent of desert jasmine through the open window, mixing with the pulse of distant drums, that relentless heartbeat of coming war. Outside, servants hurried by, their whispers cautious, fearful. The gilded palace was no longer a sanctuary, it was a battlefield. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors burst open. Malik entered, his face storm-dark, eyes sharper than a scimitar's at edge. My sheikh, the traitor was identified. Someone with access, someone trusted. His voice trembled, heavy with revelation. It's Sultan, your most loyal advisor. The word struck the room like a dagger. Rashad's breath hitched. Sultan, steadfast, calm, a man whose counsel had shaped empires, now a spy in their midst. Layla's hands clenched into fists. How deep has his betrayal gone? What has he revealed? Malik swallowed, eyes meeting Rashad's with raw honesty. Plans, movements, alliances. Dahlia's forces are prepared for every step we've taken. Rashad turned away, staring into the shadows, slithering across the polished floor. The magnitude of the treachery crushed him, not for the loss of power, but for the cost to those he loved. A soft knock startled them. The door opened slightly. A young messenger stepped in, breathless. "My sheikh, a letter arrived. No seal, no sender." Rashad took the note reluctantly, unfolding the fragile paper with trembling fingers. The message was written in a script he knew too well, the whispers of a ghost past. "You trust too easily. Your empire will crumble, not by open war, but by the poison you keep close." A chill wrapped around Rashad's shoulders. His dark eyes locked onto Layla's. The battlefield has shifted. Now, war wages in our very hearts. Layla stepped forward, voice low but fierce. "Then we must be sharper, fiercer." Night deepened as they prepared, the palace alive with hurried footsteps and whispered plans. Rashad's mind, however, was shackled by memories of Dahlia's icy glare, of that white silk cloak slipping through moonlight. What had she taken from him so long ago? What price must he pay to reclaim his world? He sought solace in Layla's presence, the only certainty amid chaos. Her steady heartbeat was a rhythm he yearned to hold close, even as the shadows closed in. Minutes stretched, breaths shortened. A sudden cracking sound shattered the fragile quiet. A candle's flame snuffed out, a door creaking open where none should be. Rashad's instincts roared to life. He signaled Malik, who vanished into the darkness with fluid grace. Layla stood beside him, their silent alliance forged in fire and steel. From the shadows, a figure emerged, unfamiliar, cloaked, their silhouette a sharpened threat against the moonlight. Rashad's voice was low, a blade wrapped in silk. "Who are you?" No answer came. The figure stepped forward, revealing a glint of familiar eyes, cold, merciless, and calculating. Then the whispered words cut through the air like desert wind slicing through dunes. "You cling to betrayals, Rashad, but the greatest lies are those you tell yourself." The palace held its breath, and beneath the weight of that confession, Rashad knew the war was no longer just for power or love. It was for the very soul of Zahram, and it was only just beginning. The heavy oak doors groaned closed behind Malik, the weight of betrayal pressing down like the scorching desert sun. Rashad turned slowly, the bitter truth slicing through the night's fragile calm. Sultan, his most trusted advisor, the loyal hand that had steadied his empire for years, was now the serpent within Zahram's gilded heart. Layla's eyes darkened, the fire inside her flickering, yet unyielding. "How long has he played the traitor?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, but edged with steel. Rashad's jaw tightened, the muscles working as if to crush the invisible chains this treason bound around his chest. "Long enough to rewrite our fate." He glanced toward the intricate patterns of the marble floor, trying to ground himself. Every plan, every movement has been exposed. Our defenses compromised, our allies uncertain. The palace, with all its sparkling tapestries and shimmering chandeliers, suddenly felt like a fragile cage. Beautiful, but deadly. Outside, the desert wind carried restless cries, as if the very sand whispered warnings of the storm sweeping over Zahram. "Do you believe Sultan acted alone?" Layla's question cut through the tension, her gaze piercing. "Or is the betrayal deeper?" Rashad's dark eyes met hers, flickering with the burden of his knowledge. "This poison runs through veins I once called family." His voice dropped to a low growl. "Dahlia's reach is far longer than we dared imagine. She's not just striking from the outside. She's unraveling everything from within." The scent of jasmine hung thick in the air, tangled with the cold bite of fear. Layla stepped forward, her hand finding Rashad's. It was a silent vow against the chaos. "Then we burn the shadows away. Let the palace see the light, even if it scorches." Their fingers entwined, drawing strength from the fragile hope slowly weaving between them. Yet beneath their resolve, both felt the tremors of an invisible war, the kind fought in whispers, lies, and haunted memories. A sudden rustle at the heavy curtains pulled their attention. Malik entered, eyes sharp and wary. "My sheikh," he warned, voice tight. "Our scouts report movements near the western ancients, the old fortress walls, where the forgotten meet. Dahlia's forces gather strength there, and someone unexpected has been sighted." Rashad's brow furrowed deeply, muscles tensing like coiled steel springs. "Who?" Malik hesitated, a heartbeat too long. "Shadow from your past, my sheikh." Layla's pulse quickened, the faintest shade of doubt crossing her visage. "Someone you trusted?" Before Rashad could respond, the private chamber's door burst open, revealing a figure cloaked in midnight silk. The air shifted violently, heavy with the scent of danger and secrets long buried. Rashad's voice dropped to a steely whisper, raw with years of suppressed fury. "Zafir." The name struck the room like a thunderclap. Zafir, once Rashad's closest friend and confidant, now a ghost wrapped in betrayal, his return not a promise, but a herald of ruin. Zafir stepped forward, eyes cold and unreadable. "You built your empire on lies, Rashad," he said, voice smooth like desert sand sliding beneath storm winds. "And now it crumbles from within." Layla's fingers tightened over Rashad's hand, a subtle anchor amid the rising tide. The opulence of Zahram's chambers, the gilded mirrors, the embroidered silks, the flickering candlelight felt hollow, mere shadows cast by a palace at the brink of war. Rashad's gaze never wavered. His voice, when it came, was iron tempered with anguish. "You chose darkness over brotherhood. For that, you will answer." Zafir's lips curled, a smile without warmth. "This kingdom you cherish is a tomb, and I hold the key." As the tension snapped like the breaking of fragile glass, a soft, deliberate sound echoed from the hallway, the slow clicking of heels on marble. The doors parted once more. A woman stepped inside, her presence a tempest in silk, the unmistakable grace of Dahlia. Her eyes blazed with vindictive fire, the wounds of the past etched deep within that icy stare. "Sleep tight, Rashad," she whispered, voice dripping with venom. "Because the nightmare is awake." Layla's breath caught as Dahlia advanced, every step a challenge, a promise of destruction wrapped in deadly beauty. Rashad straightened, the storm inside him roaring to life. This ends tonight. Dahlia tilted her head, amused. Oh, we have only just begun. Before the room could burst into chaos, Layla spoke, her voice a fierce whisper that cut through the tension like a sword. Together, Sheikh, we will face this storm. Their eyes met. Fear, defiance, and an unspoken vow binding them against the encroaching darkness. Outside, the desert winds howled, carrying secrets and lies across the endless sands. The throne of Zahram trembled, but its heart beat stubbornly on. And in the shadows that curled around the palace's opulent walls, a new betrayal waited. One closer than any had guessed, ready to shatter not just alliances, but the very soul of the Sheikh Billionario's world. The air in Rashad's private chamber was taut, fractured by the weight of Sultan's betrayal and the looming threat of Dahlia's dark return. The flickering lamps cast elongated shadows that danced like ghosts across the gilded walls, as if the very palace mourned the rupture within its shining heart. Rashad stood motionless by the window, his eyes staring blankly into the desert's endless horizon, where dawn's first light threatened to unveil an unforgiving war. Layla crossed the room silently, each step measured but fierce. Her breath was steady, but beneath her calm exterior, a tempest raged. She reached out, tentatively placing her hand over Rashad's, the touch a tether, fragile yet full of defiant promise. "We cannot let the darkness consume us," she whispered. "Not when what's at stake is more than just a kingdom." Rashad's voice, low and rough as desert stone, broke the silence. Trust, once shattered, leaves shards sharp enough to wound even the strongest of hearts. He turned, the conflict raging behind his storm-dark eyes. Sultan brought ruin that seeps through every corner. We must root out these shadows before they devour the palace whole. Her gaze never faltered. Then we hunt the venom where it lies hidden. Together. A weight settled in the room, as if fate itself held its breath. The fragile alliance between the billionaire sheikh and the servant-turned-confessor stretched taut. Footsteps echoed from the corridor. Malik stepped inside, urgency carved deep into his wary expression. "My sheikh, the western fortress, shrouded in dust and forgotten history, holds more than dust. Zafir's men have entrenched there with unexpected reinforcements." Rashad's jaw clenched, the memory of betrayal fresh and burning. Zafir, once a brother, now a shadow striking from the past. Layla's eyes flicked between Rashad and Malik, sharp as a falcon's gaze. If Zafir wields the key to this war, then he is the lock we must break. The velvet silence broke as the chamber's massive doors groaned open once more. A figure glided in, a presence so chilling, so poised, it twisted the air. Dahlia stepped forward, her white silk dress shimmering coldly, eyes glowing with vindictive hunger. "Sleep lightly, Rashad." Her voice flowed like a venomous lullaby. "Your empire is a house built on sand, and tonight the tides rise to reclaim what was stolen." Rashad met her glare with solid steel beneath the pain. "Your war will end in ashes, Dahlia." She smiled, cruel and knowing. "Oh, but the fire has only begun to consume my sheikh, and it is fueled by truths you bury deeper than secrets." Layla's hand tightened around Rashad's, an unspoken vow sparking between them. We face it as one, or we fall divided. Outside, the desert wind howled, carrying the scent of jasmine and betrayal alike. The palace, once impenetrable, was now a battlefield layered in treachery and fragile loyalties. Malik's voice cut through the mounting tension. The traitor's reach extends beyond Sultan. Our spies whisper of another, someone far closer. A cold shiver sliced through Rashad's spine. Tell me their name. Malik hesitated, eyes darting nervously. A shadow within your own inner circle. Someone whose steps you have followed without doubt until now. Rashad's heart thundered against the cage of his ribs. The inescapable truth clawed upward. The war was inside as much as outside. Layla's gaze hardened, fierce and unyielding. Then light must shine into every corner. No deception can stand against the truth. Before Malik could respond, a soft rustling sounded from the balcony doors. The night air carried a whisper, an unforeseen presence, subtle yet impossibly threatening. Rashad's eyes narrowed as a dark figure emerged, draped in midnight silk, with a mask concealing all but fierce eyes gleaming like embers in the night. The room held its breath. With a voice smooth and cold, the stranger spoke. You play a perilous game, Sheikh. But you forget, the greatest betrayals come not from enemies without, but from the shadows you embrace within. Rashad stepped forward, muscles coiled and sharp. Reveal yourself. Speak your truths plainly. The figure lowered their mask, a face both familiar and alien, etched with bitterness and silence. Layla gasped, recognizing the eyes that haunted Rashad's past. It is Saria. The name fell like a death knell. Saria, once trusted guardian of Zahram's secrets, had become an unknown variable in their unraveling fate. Saria's voice was a whisper, roaring with betrayal. I have watched from the sidelines as lies grew into empires, walls built on bones and broken promises. Your reign teeters now, Sheikh. Rashad's jaw tightened, pain and fury battling within. And what is it you want? Justice, Saria breathed, or the ruin that must come with it. Layla's hand found Rashad's again, a lifeline of steel wrapped in softness. Together they stood, defiant silhouettes framed by the moon's pale glow. Outside, the distant desert sang with impending chaos. The howl of winds mingled with the thunder of hooves. The storm that would reshape Zahram's destiny was no longer a threat looming far. It thundered at the gates. Rashad's eyes met Layla's, the flicker of fragile hope igniting between them, a beacon against the gathering night. In the depths of that moment, a whispered secret slipped through the palace's hallowed halls, one that would rip open hidden scars and force every soul to confront the very price of power. The silence shattered with a single word, breathed like a curse: betrayal. The final dawn seeped slowly into Zahram Palace, casting a warm, golden glow across the once tense halls, now transformed by victory and healing. Rashad stood, beside Layla, on the balcony, overlooking the awakening desert, their silhouettes framed by the soft light that promised new beginnings. The air smelled of jasmine and earth, fragrant and pure, as if the very sands whispered forgiveness and renewal. The storm had passed. Behind them, the palace buzzed with cautious celebration. The once oppressive weight of betrayal and war that shadowed Zahram's gilded walls had lifted, replaced by a fragile yet unshakable peace. Sultan's treachery had been unmasked, and Zafir's bitterness had been settled in the ruins of his failed rebellion. The enemy who dared to shatter the seat of power had found only united resistance. A bond forged between Rashad and Layla, tempered by fire and sealed with trust. Rashad's hand found Layla's, their fingers entwining naturally, a silent testament to the resilience that had carried them through the darkest nights. He met her gaze, no longer distant or guarded, but shining with a quiet warmth, a love earned not by ease, but through relentless courage. "Together, we survived the tempest," he said, voice steady, carrying the weight of gratitude and hope. Layla's smile was soft, the spark in her eyes reflecting a strength that had blossomed from vulnerability. "And together, we will build a future even the fiercest storms cannot break." Their shared glance held the promise of forever. Inside the grand hall, the court's atmosphere had shifted entirely. The nobles who once whispered sneers turned their skepticism into admiration. Farah, the ambassador's wife, approached, a shadow of her former arrogance softened by respect. "Sheikh Rashad, your strength is undeniable, but your greatest victory is the courage to change." Rashad nodded, with a subtle smile, a man reborn from the shackles of pride and isolation. Change is the true legacy a leader leaves. As the court began to unify, Layla received quiet nods and respectful greetings from those who had once dismissed her presence. No longer merely the servant who dared step beyond her station, she was embraced as a partner, a force that had reshaped the very fabric of Zahram. That night, the palace celebrated not just survival, but rebirth. The garden bloomed softly under starlight, flowers unfolding like quiet declarations of hope. Rashad and Layla moved through the fragrant pathways, surrounded by the laughter of children and the promise of legacy. The secrets buried beneath the sands, the betrayals, the shadows that had haunted the palace, were now relics of a painful past, laid to rest by truth and reconciliation. Dahlia's threat, once a blade poised to sever their lives, had finally been extinguished, not by violence alone, but through unity and hard-won forgiveness. Layla leaned into Rashad's side, her voice a tender murmur. "We have weathered so much, but I see only endless horizons ahead." Rashad pressed a gentle kiss to her temple, his heart finally still, the tempest calmed by her unwavering light. "With you, every dawn is a new promise." As the first rays of sun rose above the desert, bathing Zahram Palace in radiant gold, the couple stood hand in hand, no longer a billionaire sheikh and a servant, but equals in love and destiny. The empire they cherished was no longer built on fear or secrets, but on trust, courage, and a future they would forge side by side. The echoes of war faded, replaced by the symphony of hope, the soft murmur of the desert wind, the quiet bloom of jasmine, and the steady heartbeat of two souls forever intertwined. Zahram had survived, and in its heart, love endured.